Thanks for tuning in to the 6Three podcast. I'm your host, Joel, with my co-host, Ben. And we're going to do our NFL draft recap.
Yeah.
We've had 2 weeks now to let it stew a little bit and, really think about what teams won this, what teams lost this, and really dwell on the Lions picks, which by almost all unanimous accounts on draft night were like, what? So I think a lot of people have had time to kind of think about it and kind of open up the plan a little bit for the Lions in the future, and analyze it from there, their perspective. So it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on this, Ben. But like during this draft process, what team jumped out to you as like just killing the draft straight through?
I did like the Texans draft a lot. Obviously you get two of the top three picks. I mean, he traded up to get Will Anderson that was impressive. I liked the Eagles because I think that they had a plan all along. They wanted Jalen Carter. Obviously, they targeted him. They probably had a pretty good feeling that he was going to fall down to them. And they surrounded him with teammates, and they already had surrounded him with teammates, right? So he was probably the best fit for him, right? And I liked even like late in the draft, I like Tanner McKee in the 6th round. I feel like that's extreme value right there. And Keely Ringo in the 4th, that's some big value right there for them. So I really like the draft. Beyond that, Seahawks, I feel like had a really good draft. Devon Witherspoon at number 5, I think is a little high for me. But I do think he might have been like their worst pick, which is saying something, right? From a value standpoint. Obviously in the 5th round, they took 2 Michigan guys, which is kind of cool to see. But I think both those guys have high ceilings. I think they're both going to have pretty good NFL careers. Zach Charbonnet in round 2, later in round 2, was pretty good. And they also took Kenny McIntosh late, Georgia running back, who I think he could be a good NFL running back, honestly. Found a lot of value in running backs late, which we know. I feel like some teams, we can kind of talk about this, but I feel like some teams really kind of overdrafted on running backs. Even the Zach Charbonnet at number 52 seemed a little early to me. But overall, the Seahawks, I feel like, had a really good draft. And then I guess the other team, I don't know, the Steelers, I like their draft a lot.
Steelers is my number one.
The Steelers draft was really good. Broderick Jones, great pick in their 1st round, and then Joey Porter, obviously he fits the culture there.
And obviously stays home with his dad.
Right, with his dad. I love Darnell Washington all the way to the 3rd round.
I'm a big Keanu Benton fan too, but
and then Keanu Benton is great.
Nick Herbig and Corey Trice are pretty much steals.
They got a couple Wisconsin guys there, and then they were pretty Big Ten heavy. They were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of their 7 picks were Big Ten. Which is interesting. But even Corey Trice and Spencer Anderson late in the 7th round, I think are guys that have some value there. And then Nick Herbig was great. But yeah, the big one to me, Darnell Washington in the 3rd round, I feel like he was a 2nd round level talent.
I actually thought he was an early 2nd. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some things that he fell for some reasons, I'm sure. And some teams don't know where he fits, but I feel like the Steelers are going to figure it out with him. So I feel like that was a really good draft. So yeah, I mean, and like a team that I don't want to say had a good draft, but I honestly think the Bears had a pretty good draft. Darnold Wright, I was higher on him than most. At number 10, that might be a little early, but they do need to somehow protect Justin Fields.
I think he's a surefire tackle, honestly. I think everything I've seen him, he shuts down Will Anderson. He never gave up a sack for Hendon. Right.
And then I feel like they got a lot of value later in the draft. I mean, Noah Sewell.
Roshan Johnson could actually be a lot better than advertised because he had to sit behind Bijan.
Really good. Yeah, he would have been a starter on most teams. Tyler Scott can fly. Zach Pickens. I like Zach Pickens a lot from South Carolina. So I feel like they got a lot of value. They traded down obviously from number 1 to number 9. But overall a really good draft for them as well. So
Yeah. So yeah, I like I said, Pittsburgh was my number one, but I had the Eagles also my number two. Like
Yeah.
you said, I think they loaded on Georgia guys just because they got Jalen Carter. I mean, they already had a ton of Georgia guys before this, and then they traded for Swift on top of that. It's like every
They've won two national championships in a row, so why would you not pick most of their team? You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, then I think also there's just more accountability people for Jalen Carter, the
Yeah.
behavioral concerns you surround him with his people. And I
Mhm.
think they're going to be maybe positive influences on him. I mean, play next to Jordan Davis and N'Kobe Dean. And
Kobe Dean, yeah.
yeah, I think they gave him every opportunity now for Jalen Carter to keep his head on his shoulders.
Yeah, if he
And
fails
Jalen
now,
Carter with a head on his shoulders is one of the most dangerous defensive tackles in the league.
yeah, if he fails, it's his fault now.
Yeah. Um, Other ones that I liked, I did say Pittsburgh. I also really I like the Colts. You
Yeah.
know, some people may not be all big on Anthony Richardson, but
Yeah.
I think he'll figure it out over time. Might have a rough couple of 2 years. Hopefully, it doesn't blow his confidence. But Julius Brents in the second round, solid corner out of Kansas State. Josh Downs. I watched some footage of Anthony Richardson, Josh Downs already in like rookie mini camps, and looks like a nice little
Josh
connection.
Downs was a great slot. I thought he could.
In the middle of the third round, I think that's a
Yeah,
steal for me.
yeah, I agree.
Adima Babore was another guy that like was a huge fall from Northwestern, went to the early mid fourth.
Yeah,
Darius Rush out of South Carolina as a corner, another guy that went early fifth, big
yeah,
surprise. And then Jalen Jones, the corner out of Texas A&M, went into the seventh round.
yeah.
And so I feel like they got some really great value, especially late in on that draft. And then some teams that I didn't really like their draft was Jacksonville.
Yeah,
Um,
terrible.
like Anton Harrison was their first round pick. Obviously, they traded back on that one.
Yeah,
And maybe they felt like that was the best guy available. I felt like they drafted Brenton Strange from Penn State before they drafted a lot of other tight ends. Like Darnell Washington was also still there.
right.
Um, I think Tank Bigsby in the third round was not where I would have drafted Tank Bigsby. He was a fifth or sixth round
More of
grade
a
for
fifth
me.
or sixth for me. Yeah,
Um, Maybe their better picks was Antonio Johnson, the safety out of Texas A&M. Obviously, he was one of our top safeties in our position rankings. He went to the end of the fifth. And then Parker Washington out of Penn State also went in the early sixth. I felt like that was probably one of their best pick, but I thought Tyler Lacey was a reach. Yasir Abdullah was a little bit of a reach. Um, Christian Braswell out of Rutgers. They got a lot of late picks, and so I think that's kind of to be expected. But even those late picks, I made pretty expansive position rankings of like top 75 for every position, and they have a couple guys that didn't even pop up on my list. So Jaguars do not get a good grade from me.
the
Um,
Vikings got a tear. To me, the Vikings did not have a great draft either.
yeah, but the NFC North grades that I've seen over the course, like very fluid. I've seen some people rate the Lions A minus. I've seen some people rate the Lions D plus.
Yeah,
And I think with the Packers, I've seen a D plus grade for the Packers. I've also seen an A minus for Packers.
yeah.
So it's just
The tough one for me with the Vikings is I feel like they didn't address enough needs early. You know what I mean? Like Jordan Addison, I think, is a great receiver, like arguably wide receiver one on some boards, I'm sure. But and pair him with uh with Justin Jefferson, like he's gonna be awesome, right? But like they didn't need that, you know what I mean? Like they needed a corner. Like they had Deontay Banks right there to be had, right? They had some other guys that could have been taken at that point, and they didn't. So I don't really know. And then Mekhi Blackman, I wasn't that high on him. I feel like that was a little bit of a reach even in the third round. Obviously, they thought, oh, we need a corner now, and they were kind of maybe hoping one of those guys would have fallen down to that point. But if they really wanted a corner, maybe they should have traded up. And then like even late in the draft, like Dwayne McBride, I didn't hate him out of UAB. That was their last
I
pick,
thought that
and
was a pretty solid pick, actually.
that's good. Like round 7, that's hit or miss anyway. Like is what it is. But like Jaron Hall, like what? Like I don't see that really working out. Jacqueline Roy, I mean, he was hit or miss at LSU. Jay Ward, even as a DB, I wasn't super high on him. So I mean, really, the only guy I really liked are their first and last picks, honestly.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I didn't love their middle picks at all. So
The Rams, I didn't think
Yeah.
a single pick jumped out at me either. You
No.
know, it's hard though when you're the Rams in their defense here. They had their first pick was in the early second round, and then
Yeah.
they had like one, two, three, four, five, six, seven picks that were like late, like or six to the seventh. They have like six picks from the sixth to the seventh.
Yeah.
That's a ton.
They gotta really hope that like two or three of those hit.
Yeah, as even like second stringers at this
Yeah,
point. So
like
like,
depth pieces. Yeah.
yeah, Steve Avila was a little bit, he was their first pick, and I was like, okay, well, obviously they want to protect Stafford in any capacity they can.
And he was arguably like I know a lot of teams had him as the best center, right?
Yeah,
And he is a flexible guy that can play guard. So I
yeah,
didn't hate that. I mean, I do understand the value there. But that kind of sucks when he's your first pick. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I was gonna say like you said, he's versatility on the interior. He's not like old Timmy who can only really play center.
Right.
But yeah, they drafted Colby Turner there in the third. I don't like Colby Turner. I'm not high on him like that.
Right.
But there's two Byron Youngs in this draft. I think they got the best one, the edge rusher from
Right.
Tennessee.
Right.
Then their fourth pick of the draft was Stetson Bennett. So that'll be
Yeah,
an interesting.
interesting.
That'll be an interesting one. That I didn't hate Stetson probably in the late fourth, but like Trey Tomlinson, O'Shawn Mathis, Zach Evans, Ethan Evans, the punter out of Wingate.
Yeah.
Dejuan Johnson was Mr. Irrelevant this year. And then Jason Taylor Jr. Out of Oklahoma State. Not a bunch of guys that like move the needle for me. So I think the Rams struggled. And I think the 49ers might have had my last ranked draft. And that's no shot on Jake Moody or anything like that, obviously. He's the best kicker. He is unanimously the best kicker.
You take him as the third round in round three, and I get it, right? They're like, hey, we need a kicker, and he's our kicker.
And he is
But
arguably the best kicker in the draft. I mean,
I think he was, but
yeah.
it's round three. Like that's so tough. Like you're gonna get shafted for that by all accounts because it's literally the third round. I mean, it's just that's tough. Plus, they didn't have a draft pick until number 87.
Well, yeah,
So
I was going to say 87, and they had 3 third-round picks. Jake Moody was the second of the 3. So
Yep.
they get Jair Brown, the safety out of Penn State, who's certainly not Jaquan Brisker. I'm not
No.
big on him.
No.
Cameron Latu, the tight end of Tennessee. Alabama. I don't think he's that good.
Nope.
Robert Beal Jr., the edge from Georgia, had some injury issues. We'll see how he pans out. He could be like Georgia's version of Clemson's stacked defensive line when they had Austin Bryant. He might just be Austin Bryant. And then they get Ronnie Bell in the 7th. Solid pick. I'm not going to bash on Ronnie. In fact, I probably thought he could have gone as early as mid-5th.
Yep.
And then I don't hate Jalen Graham as a special teams linebacker. I think he could actually be a special teams beast in this league. But every other pick outside of that,
I think D Winters is interesting. I think depending on the scheme, I think he fits kind of because he's more of a box safety to me than a linebacker because he's undersized. But that dude hits. I think he's in the 6th round. I feel like he's definitely some value there. But I like their later picks way more than I like their first 5 picks. Their first 5 picks, I mean, I'm not going to bash Jake Moody. He's like I said, he's the best kicker in the draft. But like if he's picked in the 5th round, it's way different. You know what I mean? But they obviously knew that they wanted him. The other team that I did not like at all was the Dolphins. Now I know they only had 4 picks, so that skews it a little bit. But like, I mean, I feel like they didn't even get any better. Like
A-Kane is not bad. Devin A-Kane.
Yeah, but like they already have guys like that. You know what I mean? Like Cam Smith.
They just want speed. They just want all the speed.
Yeah, I guess. But
Ryan Hayes is a blazer, dude. Ryan Hayes is fast.
Yeah, I mean he can fly for a tackle. Cam Smith. I mean, I didn't hate Cam Smith in round 2. I mean, probably where he was that made sense, right? But Devin A-Chain. I mean, yeah, I mean maybe he's a return guy, but he's not going to get many carries this year, in my opinion.
Especially because he's a replica of other running backs they have in that room.
Yeah, I mean he's basically there. I mean, depending on what they do with, I guess, the rest of the roster, maybe, but he doesn't like move the needle for me at all. If he went to a team that needed a guy like that, then maybe he would fit better. But he definitely fits.
Yeah, I actually liked A-Chain for the Lions in about the 4th round if they didn't draft him.
Yeah. And then Elijah Higgins doesn't move the needle at all for me at tight end. And then Ryan Hayes, I mean, I think he'll probably turn out to be a decent pro. Most Michigan linemen nowadays do. So I don't hate that in the 7th. I could have seen him going as early as the 5th, honestly. if a team really liked him, but he's an undersized or underweight, if anything, tackle. So he probably fits their scheme a little bit because they want to spread it out. But yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, I know they only had 4 picks, but I don't feel like they got that much better.
Oh, and so the fourth worst one that I have here is the Chiefs, which is
Yeah,
nice. I mean, seems like the Chiefs never miss though. If you always look at it in hindsight, it's like they've had really decent drafts the last like 4 or 5 years, so maybe they're due finally. But
sure.
you know, Felix Anudike Uzoma at 31, the last pick of the first round. I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
and not like you always hope that a guy's going to jump in, but they aren't going to trade out of that pick being in Kansas City for the draft, right? They're
no,
not going to do that.
no,
So,
no,
then they traded up with the Lions to get
yeah,
Rashee Rice in the mid to late second round. Rashee
yeah.
Rice, I like, he's an okay receiver, but I had a early fourth round grade on him.
Yeah, if they picked him in the third or fourth, it would have made more sense to me. Obviously, they don't usually miss too much on the receivers, so obviously they see what they want there. But I feel like there were other receivers if they really wanted to go that route at that point.
Their best pick to me was Wanya Morris, the tackle out of
Yeah,
Oklahoma. They got him at the end of the third. And I was
yeah,
like, that to me, Wanya Morris is actually a mid-second round grade for me. So
yep.
I like that.
You didn't,
Every other pick,
you
Shamar,
didn't like BJ Thompson at 166 from Stephen F. Austin?
he's a developmental guy, but it might work. Nick Jones might have been, even though it's a seventh round pick. I was like, who is Nick Jones? I had to like look up Nick Jones when I
Yeah,
drafted the seventh round pick. So who cares really? But
yeah,
Shamari Connor, I thought was a reach, the safety out of Virginia Tech.
yeah.
Colburn could be a role player out of Texas, Keandre Colburn, but
Yeah.
I just not a.
I would have given them like a C or C minus. Like they were pretty meh for
Well, I
me.
gave a C minus, but I give very few D's. And I don't think I've ever given an F because I always feel like there's at least one player, and I'm like, I don't hate that. But
Well, if you have a
San
first round
Francisco is
pick
my
at
least.
all, to
San
me, if
Francisco is
you
my
have a
least
first
D.
round pick at all, like you probably aren't getting an F because I enjoyed like your, you know what I mean? That dude was probably pretty good.
Yeah.
So
Well, so San Francisco was my last, and I gave them a D.
yeah. What did
Um,
you think of the Cowboys?
Cowboys actually was like, all right, that's not bad. I gave them a B
Because I gave them
plus.
a B minus,
Okay.
and I don't know. It's interesting because obviously they took 2 Michigan guys, right? 1 and 2 for their first 2 picks, right? So I think Mozzie Smith fills a role for them. They need to be able to stop the run, and that's basically what he does. So I didn't hate that pick in the first round. I was kind of not shocked, but surprised that he went that early. I thought maybe he'd be more of a like a early second, maybe mid second. But it makes sense. Luke Schoonmaker at their second pick.
That was a reach to me. I thought they could
That
have
was
got
a
him in probably the
reach.
third or
I mean,
fourth.
obviously he fits like he's very similar to Dalton Schultz, and that's what they're looking for,
They
right?
like Michigan tight ends. They've had Sean McCune, Ian Bunting,
They do, yeah,
Nick Eubanks, all in
they
Dallas
do.
in the last couple of years.
Yep. DeMarvion Overshone to me was interesting.
So I like him, but I thought he
I
could have been
didn't.
like a fourth round steal.
Yeah,
They
he
got him
was
in
a
the
little
third.
early.
Yeah.
He was a little early, and then Deuce Vaughn to me was an undrafted. I know there's the familial
They had to
connection.
draft him
They
for
had to draft him,
respects.
but like he's not like come on guys, like he's not he's too undersized. They're
Salami
better.
Fehoko is the best pick, in my opinion. And
Yes, for the
in the fourth round, getting
where
the
they
edge rush.
drafted him, absolutely. I think he could have been a third round pick
Yeah.
easily. So I don't know. I had them more of a C plus B minus range.
I think
I
the
know,
homer in me just were like, you went back to back
yeah,
Michigan? I love that.
but Mozzie Smith, I think, is going to be a good pro. And actually, Luke Schoonmaker, I think, is going to be just solid. I don't think he's ever going to like blow anybody away. But you see,
Do you
I mean,
think,
there's,
would you consider Zach Gentry solid though? Because I don't actually consider Zach Gentry quite solid. I think he's like just below solid, but
I think Schoonmaker is better than Gentry though.
okay.
Gentry's faster, but I
Yeah.
think
He's
Schoonmaker is
he's an
better
athlete
overall.
for being
I
as
think I
tall as
think
he is. He's like 6'8", but
I think Gentry or not Gentry, Schoonmaker is an overall better tight end though. So I think Schoonmaker will surprise. I think he'll be pretty darn good actually.
yeah.
And he blew up some boards late. Like he was like during the combine and everything like that. Like a lot of teams started to really like him. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's talk about the Lions here a little bit.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, obviously they trade back with the Dolphins. I mean the Cardinals. To go to 12 from 6.
yep,
And they get JAHMYR GIBBS, which
yep.
you know, point blank, I saw that right away, and I was like, I figured we'd address running back, but I actually was not. You know, a lot of people have been calling for Swift's head. They claim he's always unhealthy, but I'm like, he plays 12 out of 17 games a year, and I'm like, I don't hate that as a role running back.
Yep.
And I'm like, now I'm worried he's just going to go absolutely off because he is for sure the number one now. And I don't know, Gainwell's not stealing carries from him. Like, I just,
Oh, but the question is he going to be out for 6 games, right? And the thought to me, the thought process with Gibbs, I think JMO being out for 6 games sort of influenced that pick a little
oh,
bit
well, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
because they're like, we need more firepower. One, two, they're worried about Swift's longevity. I don't think they were going to resign him anyway. I really don't. Especially after getting Montgomery now. I just don't think they were going to resign him. I don't think a lot of teams are like, they're overvaluing running back. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I just think they saw a really good football player in JAHMYR Gibbs, and they thought, he can help their offense this year. And I think if any indication of how the Lions are thinking, it like you look at what they did in free agency, you look at just kind of how they've gone about their business. They're going for it this year. Like they are trying to win the NFC this year. Like I know that might be a stretch, but like
I think anytime you hear Lions are trying to win the NFC, it's like,
yeah,
what?
it's like what is going on here, right? Let's win 10 games first, thanks. but
Take me to the Twilight Zone.
they
Man.
are gunning for it, right? Like it's quite obvious. Like they're getting all the signings, Gardner Johnson, getting
Cam Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley.
even in the draft. You look at the draft, like getting a Hendon Hooker in the 3rd round, like that, to me, that's a signal that they're going for it, right? You fully knowing, like, if Jared Goff goes down, we still want to have a chance. You know what I mean? Like, if Nate Sudfeld is not it.
They could have like signed like Teddy Bridgewater or something like that.
They could have, right? But Hendon Hooker and Teddy Bridgewater are almost the same guy to me at this point. So, and the way they drafted in the 1st round, I mean, JAHMYR Gibbs, they think he can help them right away, right? And Jack Campbell, they think that he can be a starting linebacker right away, right? So they're trying to find guys that are going to help them immediately. Even Sam LaPorta, he's going to be a starting tight end. You know what I mean?
Well, especially in our tight end room. Yeah, I would
right. Say. I mean, it's quite obvious. They upgraded. If you think about it, though, they upgraded every single position.
Yeah, their first picks are
5 awesome. Picks, I would say, were an upgrade at every single position because Hendon Hooker is the backup quarterback, and he was pick number 5, and he's a better than Nate Sudfeld, in my opinion.
That's not setting the bar very high for sure.
No, but the last 3, I mean, at that point, you're getting some depth guys or guys that you maybe really felt good about. The COLBY SORSDAL. I mean, I have no idea. We'll see what happens.
They had some weird picks, man. But
Antoine Green. I mean, we'll see, but that's round 7 anyway. So
yeah, I mean, obviously they've got the most like electric running back, if not player, in this draft offensively.
Right. And they did the
legitimate
same thing.
Blazer. He's a home run threat.
They did the same thing last year. They did the exact same thing last year with Jameson Williams, right? So they obviously are realizing they need to be more explosive in the passing game, especially.
Well, they haven't had a running back like this since you go back to probably Reggie Bush.
Yeah.
So he's going to add the speed element to the Lions offense. And like you mentioned, that's going to be huge with Jameson out. They're probably going to use him in the slot quite a bit this year. Even.
Yeah.
So I think after I thought about that, face value, when I first saw that name pop up, I was like, D grade. And then I thought about it, worked my way up to about a B-. But
I give it a B. I'll give it a B. I'll be a little higher. I'll give it a B. Yeah. I understand. Like you have to, I think you have to take.
I think positional value matters a little bit, but especially when you're a team like that definitely hasn't proved that they're ready to just take the jump from not playoffs to NFC Championship game. It's like, I want to take guys that are going to be like surefire positional value. And so I think I valued that a little bit more this year. Now, if they were good this year, they even made a playoff in the playoffs wild card, and they even won a game. Then I'm like, cool. You have I can afford you the ability to take the guy that you love.
Yeah. And they're in a weird spot, right? Because I agree with you. They're in a weird spot to a point, because I think my argument for the pick was, if you're a team like the Lions who feels like they're a playoff team even before the draft, like if you took the Lions roster before the NFL draft, I would feel like they are a playoff team.
Yeah.
You know, and they're
Well, I
and
thought
they're
even the way they played at the end of last year, they're a
right,
fringe playoff team.
they were playing like a playoff team and a team that nobody wanted to play. Right. I mean, they were in fact probably the third or fourth best team in the NFC by the end of the year, I would say. Right. So if you're looking at it that way, you know, it's like, yeah, that pick makes sense. But I also see what you're saying. They didn't even make the playoffs last year. They played so terrible at the beginning of the year. Like,
Yeah.
can't really remove that from the equation, right?
So they may feel like they're there, but
right.
Like I love to
are they
say,
there?
facts
Right?
don't care about your feelings.
Correct. Like, are
So,
they
I mean,
really there yet? And that's they kind of probably feel like they're kind of in between, right? They had such a weird season, right? They were so bad and then so good.
Mhm.
So it was kind of one of those weird ones. But so I understand the pick, but I can't give them better than a B because
Well, and then also because now Gibbs immediately with how much he's going to make being the 12th overall pick, he's going to probably get close to $5 million a year right off the bat, which actually puts him in the top 20 for highest paid running backs in the NFL without anything. So I love having the skill set of Gibbs, like, you know, guy that can relieve Montgomery, can also play in the slot, is just that explosive guy, the burner. I think he's going to be fun to watch at the very least.
He's going to be really good. I really do think he's going to be good.
I just didn't think it was a wise use of valuable draft capital. So that's kind of where, and I think, like I said, personally, I probably would have taken Christian Gonzalez. But I think Gibbs might have been a decent choice after I thought about it. Gibbs might have been like my third other choice. I considered Lucas Van Ness there at 12.
That would have been a little high for me for Van Ness. To me,
Van Ness actually only went 2 picks later though, the Packers. So it was like
correct. Yeah.
And but I don't know. I just, like I said, after I thought about it, you know, Gibbs to me was probably my third favorite option at that spot if they couldn't trade back out again. Because and personally, the way I took that is I think they lost their guy at 6. I think Witherspoon might have been their guy there at 6 if they would have stayed.
Witherspoon, I think their first choice was Will Anderson if he fell.
And then Witherspoon, right?
And then they were like, okay, he's not there. Neither of them are there. We're getting.
And I think maybe legitimately I believe them that Gibbs might have been their third option, even above Bijan.
Right. But they fully realized, okay, we can't take Gibbs at 6. They were probably like, that would be literally crucified for taking Gibbs at 6. And it makes no sense we're not paying a running back. He's not Saquon Barkley. He's not Christian McCaffrey, right? We can't pay a running back that, right? Even if he's not there when we get to 12 for some reason, like they knew he would be there at 12, right?
Yeah.
So they trade back. I agree with you. I was hoping they would trade again. I was actually texting my dad. I was like, they should trade out again. They should obviously trade again.
I was like, can they though? Like that's it. I don't think it's as easy to trade out of a spot as they think it is.
It's not.
As we think it might be. I think
it's not. It's not that easy.
You're not going to get stimmed either. I think that
especially because if a team knows you want out of a spot, they, you know what I mean? They don't necessarily want into that spot. You know what I mean?
I was going to say, they might just give you a third round pick and then they're a late first. Like they may not give you any good value.
You might not get enough value. And at that point you take Gibbs. So it makes sense to me, like logically. It's just one of those things where it's like a running back at number 12 and arguably running back 2 on most boards at number 12.
Well, probably borderline running back 2 on just the Lions, like as their first pick.
Yeah, Bijan might have been number 1. I mean, I don't know.
But I also felt like he was a replica of David Montgomery.
Yeah. But, no, they weren't going to take. They were never going to take Bijan after getting Montgomery. Yeah. If they never got Montgomery,
but there were so many people mocking Bijan to Detroit, and I was like, why?
I know. Hold on, turn away now.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, I don't. I get why they took Gibbs instead though, because I think he fits what the offense better. At least, I mean, I feel like you're going to see Montgomery and Gibbs on the field a lot together.
Yeah, so. but I also stood by, you know, you talked about the running back position. Maybe you will look at it as a little more valuable, especially depending on the running back. But I think the Lions, especially the last 2 years with the offensive line that they've built over the last course of, you know, free agency, draft, whatever. It's a top 3 offensive line, almost unanimously, almost by all experts considered. It's a top 3 offensive line. And Craig Reynolds can run for 1,000 yards on that line. Justin Jackson probably can run for close to 1,000 yards behind that line.
I love Justin Jackson. He's great. I love Justin Jackson.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the running backs proved running behind that they were still popping 4.5 yards to carry. It's like that works. He may not have the durability or the energy to go full games, which is why I felt like Montgomery and Swift was fine at that point. But I also agree with what you're saying. You're not gonna if you're not gonna they didn't pick up Swift's option. They probably weren't gonna re-sign him. And you feel like you could draft a running back. That's why I look at this as I slowly move the grade up from D at face value to B minus.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Yep.
But yeah, number 18 now. They're our second first round pick where they were probably not able to trade out of this one either. But they get the 6'5", 250-pound linebacker at Iowa, Jack Campbell. So just two absolutely fired up Campbells now in this Detroit squad. Makes it a little fun. Ran close to a 4.6 40. He is relatively athletic.
He tested way better than I thought he would at the combine.
I think Dan Campbell said in the interview with Chris Long, I think it was earlier today or yesterday, but basically said he's like, we didn't love the linebacker class at all on this, but we know that we needed to put competition in that room. You know, we love what Rodrigo's done. We think Anzalone's great. And then, you know, Derek Barnes is coming along. We bring back Jalen Reeves-Maybin. He was talking about that. He's like, but I think that linebacker room needed a little bit more competition. And he's like, so I didn't love it, but I think Campbell was easily the best linebacker in our opinion. So I think because they wanted to address that position so badly, and people knew it, that linebacker is probably the weakest position on the Lions at this point.
Yep.
I did not hate this.
I didn't
much as experts did. A lot of people, and I saw a lot of mocks. Like I said, I made a massive spreadsheet of mocks, and so many people were like, "Why had Jack Campbell in the second round? He would have made it." I actually saw. I made like 45 mocks that I put next to each other, and I think probably 18 of them had Jack Campbell go to like the Bills. Bills love their linebackers too, and I think Chris Long even talked about the podcast. He's like, just the day before they had Bean, the GM for the Bills, on, and he was talking about how he likes, you know, addressing the linebacker position, thinks it's important. There's a lot of talk that he wasn't going to be there for their second pick. The Bills were gunning for Campbell.
Well, and beyond Jack Campbell, at least in the Lions defense, Jack Campbell, maybe he doesn't have the highest ceiling of all the linebackers in that draft class. There's a couple guys where I'm like, man, if he figures it out, like he could be crazy good. But like he is easily the most sure thing of the linebackers in this class.
He's Anzalone, worst case, right?
Yeah, worst case. So if you have two Anzalones out there, you probably feel pretty decent about that linebacker. You know what I mean? And then you throw Rodrigo in there, or Derek Barnes, or whatever. Like it's probably not the worst thing in the world, right? It's not ideal, right? You probably still need to address it, maybe even next draft, or you know, in free agency or something, right? But best case, he's like really good. You know what I mean? Best case, he's like a, you know, incredibly instinctive, and
he's like Urlacher. He's an old school linebacker.
Best case, he's just the run stuffing middle linebacker that you've been missing, and a guy who can kind of do it all.
Well, he's so old school, right? He's massive. He's the type of middle linebacker. You don't see these types of linebackers come out of college anymore. Like he's a massive middle linebacker, and I think because of his measurables.
I will never forget though when Blake Corum juked him out of his shoes. So that's the lasting memory I have of Jack Campbell at Iowa.
Again, the Lions in the first round, they address positions that maybe the rest of the NFL teams don't really like jump on, like running back, linebacker. They're not the most coveted.
That's why they were crucified after the first round. I think a lot of like analysts and things kind of.
Well, they say position value, and then they also just say, you know, prospect value. Like a lot of people had them as early second round picks. And I think, you know, if they fit.
Most teams looked at him and said, okay, who's the best running back? A lot of teams had JAHMYR GIBBS. Like a lot of guys still had like best talent at running back. Yeah, Bijan Robinson maybe slightly ahead, but JAHMYR GIBBS from a pure football player ability is a top 20 player, right? And Jack Campbell is the best, probably best.
I didn't have an argument that there was a better linebacker this year in this class, but
no.
So yeah, I actually gave this grade a B.
Yeah.
And again, positional value maybe, and the fact, but you look at it, I don't see there's any way he's getting past the Bills in the mid-20s.
No, so if you targeted him as the guy you wanted to address a problem position on the team, that pick makes sense to me.
Yeah. So I mean, who else I would have picked at that spot? Maybe just to give yourself by far the best wide receiver room, you take Jackson Smith-Njigba, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you can fit him in there though.
The only other guys that jumped out was Kalijah Kancey and Joey Porter Jr.
I would have considered Kalijah Kancey or Joe. I would have considered both of them. Obviously Porter fell a decent amount actually. and I was actually lower on him than a lot of
Well,
teams.
his big flaw is just holding and pass interference. He's
Yeah, I
just
mean,
too physical at the point of attack.
he's too handsy. So I would have liked him in the second round if he was still there, but
So the
um,
Lions' first second round pick was Sam LaPorta and back-to-back Iowans. Again, 6'3". Surprisingly, he's smaller than Jack Campbell. 6'3", 245. He's faster though. He ran a 4.59.
uh-huh.
And I felt like he probably went maybe 10 picks earlier than I probably would have had him in most mock
Yep.
drafts. But
Yep.
again, I think he flew under the radar because it's such a talented tight end class. I mean, loaded with Michael Mayer, Luke Musgrave, Darnell Washington.
And I think the other thing is he played in a horrendous offense.
Yeah, I
Like
mean, you got
arguably
Spencer
one of the
Petras
worst
throwing you.
you can possibly play in, and he still put up some pretty good numbers.
He was their consistent guy. So
Right.
that does say a lot. I think after the departure of fellow tight end, Iowa tight end TJ Hawkinson, I think Laporte is even more athletic, and I think that he's going to fill the void of the pass catching tight end role. I mean, we've been loaded with the blocking guys like Brock Wright and stuff, and I think St. Shane Zylstra was probably a receiving tight end, but James Mitchell's probably preferably a blocking tight end.
Yep.
So yeah, so I think unlike Hawkinson though, Laporta is a huge threat after the catch. He's fun to watch after he gets the ball in his hands. He breaks tackles, almost a surefire break tackle.
Yep.
I think only behind Dalton Kincaid for forced missed tackles in 2022 is what I saw. So that was my big note that I took on him. He did struggle with drops, which is something that Lions fans should be cautious of. Other tight ends that have struggled with drops. He had a 9.2% career drop rate. And he's never been great in contested catch situations.
I'm
think
still interested to see how he does because I still chalk up some of this to I mean, he hasn't had a good quarterback ever. Maybe probably ever. So I know like contested catches, drops like that maybe that isn't quarterback play, but some of it is, ball placement.
I think he's an average blocker too, but again, they don't have to utilize him like that.
No, he can be the flex guy. You know what I mean? He's got to be able to do it all to an extent, but he can be more of a flex guy for sure.
So I think like I said, he was a shoo-in to be drafted in the second round. Again, maybe a little earlier. There are still some concerns. I still give this pick a B.
Yep.
So I've had a
He
B minus
addressed the
B.
need. I mean, I think the theme of the first really 5 picks for the Lions draft is addressing a need, like a clear need on this roster was addressed and handled to me. And yes, maybe positional value was not, I guess, valued by the Lions as much as normal. They kind of went against the grain a lot, but at the same time, they addressed a need every single time in the first 5 picks. The last 3 picks, we can talk about them. They're more flyer picks, in my opinion, and that's okay, honestly, for me late in the draft, especially when you have that many draft picks. If you go after a developmental guy or a guy you think might, be a diamond in the rough. But the first 5 picks to me, even though I think most analysts or whatever said it after the draft, they were like, I love the guys they got. I just don't love the order. Right.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that.
But I mean, to me, that's kind of. I mean, who cares if you
If you
love the
think about it,
players?
yeah.
You know what I mean. And you significantly improved as
It
a.
was like the year where we drafted Amani Arawari and Jelani Tavai, and we
Right.
took Tavai in the second, and we took Arawari in the fifth.
Right.
Arawari for sure looked like a second round pick there for a while. He was doing really well.
So
And
to
Tavai
me,
looked like a fifth.
I mean, if you just get better, if you get significantly better as a football team in the first 5 picks, I mean, I think that's kind of a win. I still think they probably had a top 13 or 14 draft in this year. Maybe and obviously down the road we'll see, where it really ends up. But like they could end up with a top 10 draft class very easily.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I still would have given. I think I might have given it like an A minus best case I think my preferable target here would have been Michael Mayer.
I'm gonna take tight end maybe.
Well, Steve Avila was the only other one that came out to me at that point, and I still would have taken Laporta over Avila. So Laporta is probably my number 2 option there.
They obviously didn't like something about Mayer, and Mayer. I think Laporta is actually again the most sure thing as a tight end. I think Mayer has a higher ceiling, but he doesn't have the blocking ability that Laporta does, and I think they value that. The Lions do at least. So
that's the thing about the last year's draft. They definitely drafted like the most sure thing for sure. And I think in some cases here they drafted, I think they kind of stayed a little bit consistent with that. But if they're also a team that's looking to, blossom and grow, you try to take some of the flyers. And I think, like you said, they took them later in the draft. They for sure took flyers. But like last year, Aiden Hutchinson, for sure the most safe,
The most safe pick in the entire draft.
And it turns out he's also got a massive ceiling. But
Yep. Yeah.
So
yeah, same thing. I mean, I think it's the same idea with I mean, even last draft, I mean, even guys like the Elite McNeils or the some of those guys, pretty solid. You don't, I mean, late in the draft, like you knew those guys were probably going to contribute. You know what I mean? James, but they always seem to have one. At least
Jameson was a flyer, right?
Jameson Williams, a little bit of a flyer. Obviously, he hasn't done anything yet, but you see that the talent is ridiculous, right? Maybe that's their JAHMYR GIBBS this year. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. The second round, number 45 overall, is probably one of my favorite picks, and your favorite pick in the entire draft is Brian Branch. Safety, nickel corner out of Alabama, can do it really all. He'll probably blow up to 200 pounds by the time he's in the NFL. He's 6 foot tall, a little slower. He ran about a 4.58 40. But he was a top 20 player on my personal big board. I think I had him at 18, if I'm correct.
I was actually frustrated the Lions didn't take him at 18 a little bit.
He was the guy I was really
slightly. I was like, but Branch is there. I thought there was no way he would fall as far as he did.
And then they skipped again on him at 34. I was like,
I know. I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then obviously they knew what they were doing, but he was the best pick value wise the Lions had for sure, and maybe one of the better value picks of the entire draft. He's a chess piece, right? They can move him around the defense. I think he'll fit perfect with Aaron Glenn, and I think he lets them.
I think he fits perfect learning under Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, and they can move.
They're the same.
They'll be on the field at the same time, I think, a lot, and they can move Chauncey Gardner-Johnson around. That helps them really get him, on the outside some, in the slot, maybe in the box. You know what I mean? Like that is
long term. Branch is the succession plan, right?
Right, because Gardner-Johnson's on a 1-year deal, right? So we'll see if they resign him. Obviously, that's a possibility down the road, but Branch is basically Gardner-Johnson but younger, which is awesome. I think that was an amazing pick, best pick by far.
Yeah, I mean, if he had a better combine, for sure a first round selection. Kind of glad he wasn't. I think it kept him under the radar. I talked about my position rankings. Brian Branch was really the only safety that I was like, I'm sure he is going to work out in some capacity. I'm usually bigger on like high end athletes, but his instincts are huge, and I think that's going to be key when he gets into the safety position. Still a little sticky in coverage, but I think he's aggressive against the run from everything I've seen. So in the second round, I don't think you do much better. I actually give him an A+. That is my selection I'm taking all day. Any other option? Keanu Benton would have been the only other one I would consider.
Yeah, I wouldn't have hated that one.
Cyrus Torrance, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if they address defensive tackle, but they obviously feel pretty good about the position right now. So I mean, that one makes sense to me as well. But I would have. Yeah, I don't think you could have gone any other way if you're the Lions at that point. So.
Third round, number 68 overall is Hendon Hooker, the quarterback out of Tennessee, who to me is a first round quarterback if he does not tear his ACL, right?
Yeah.
He tore his ACL in November against South Carolina, and so he probably won't be likely to play immediately anyway, which probably means they're going to have to roster Nate Sudfeld, which means you hope Goff is healthy for at least the first 6 to 8 games, because I don't think there's any way that he's coming back. Hooker's not ready before the bye week, I don't think.
That's fine.
Yeah. But like I like his size. To me, he's like the prototypical NFL quarterback size. Like when I think of what I want an NFL quarterback size wise, it's like 6'3", 6'4", 225. And that's pretty much where Hooker lands. There's obviously some buzz even pre-draft where he could have been a first round pick, especially for a team that wanted to trade in and get that 5th year on him at 31. The talent is there. Quarterbacks that usually possess that skill set go a lot higher. He led the nation's top offense in points per game, yards per game, and he had like a 9.5 yards per pass attempt. Doesn't turn the ball over, and I think was one of the best in the nation in turnover-worthy play percentage. So I like that we now have a good backup quarterback and potentially a succession plan.
I don't know, like it just seems like a guy that you can actually develop. You know what I mean? Like if you get a guy like a Nate Sudfeld or even a Chase Daniel or whatever, they kind of are what they are at that point, right? Even if they're solid, like uh, I think you have a chance with Hendon Hooker that you can actually like hit with him, and maybe he is a starting quarterback down the road, right? You never know. But I feel like he's got a pretty low or pretty high floor, I guess, is kind of what I was thinking. So he might not have the highest ceiling, obviously, of the quarterbacks in the draft, this draft class, but he's got a pretty low or a high floor. So I feel like it was safe.
Yeah, I give an A- on it. My only pick I would have done otherwise is maybe double up at linebacker and get Trenton Simpson at this
Yeah,
spot. The third round, he was still there.
yeah.
And I think
That would
it's
have
an
been
A. It's
awesome.
Hooker's an A plus if he's ready week one. To
Yeah,
me, I'll move it to that if he's ready week one. Like I would love to have a backup quarterback ready to go, just in case.
yeah.
Other guys that I guess could have been considered at 68. I looked at Keely Ringo was there.
Mhm.
Cedric Tillman
Mhm.
was another guy that I looked at, but Hooker's probably one of my favorite options at that point besides Trent Simpson.
I think Hooker besides Simpson makes sense. I mean, uh, they probably weren't going to go with Tillman because they passed on Smith and Jigba. Like so, obviously receiver wasn't a focus. They probably feel like Gibbs can play receiver slot at least a little bit. And they after taking Branch, they probably weren't going to go with Keely Ringo. So I think it makes the most sense for them right there.
And then in their last third round pick, number 96 overall, was Brodric Martin, the nose tackle from Western Kentucky Hilltoppers.
Yeah.
This might have been one of my least favorite draft picks. And I know it's because it's still a third round. This is the guy that you expect to be an immediate starter. And honestly,
Really,
unless you're
really
somehow better than Aleem McNeil and Isaiah Buggs, which I don't think Brodric Martin is better than either of those guys at all. In fact, I would argue if he's gonna be better than Benito Jones. So
right.
Holmes gave up 122, 139, and 168 just to move up and get this guy. And I'm like, who is
Yeah.
this guy? When I found
I
out
was
that they traded
excited. I
him,
was excited when they moved up because I'm like, oh, maybe they
must be
know.
someone big. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
no,
And
wasn't.
at that point, it was like, Darius Rush was like a guy that jumped out at me. I was like, ooh, Darius Rush would be cool here.
Yeah, what if they got him? Yeah, exactly.
But obviously he's a one tech. He's 6'5", 337.
Big dude.
He's a big
Not
guy. 38, 5-inch arms. He is definitely a purebred nose tackle. That's his calling.
yeah.
But from an athletic standpoint, leaves a lot to be desired. Not that at nose athleticism is super big, but like big body defensive tackles drafted on day 2 are usually more productive. This guy actually seems like a John Pennicini drafted way too early.
Yeah.
And I was reading more on it, and I pulled up an article from Logan Lamrandier actually on him. And Logan specifically said, full disclosure, I didn't spend much time evaluating Martin in pre-draft process. And I barely did either. The fact that I ranked him at like, I think 68 on defensive tackles out of like the 75 position that I do in that position.
Yeah.
So he says, yeah, I didn't spend much time evaluating him. On my initial look, I quickly passed over him and chalked him up as just a large one tech. And then he
Just a
adds,
dude. Yeah.
he says, and then he's like, in the ads, honestly, even after doing more digging, I still didn't find much to be overly excited about. His upside appears to be a rotational nose tackle with nimble feet who might be difficult to move. All in all, the limited potential as a part-time player who required 3 picks to acquire is just hard to wrap my head around. And I'm like,
Exactly. That's how I feel. If they took him the 6th or 7th,
yeah, I'd be
I'd be like,
stoked.
oh, okay, that's fine.
I'll take a big dude. I'll take a big dude.
Yeah, I don't care. Some massive dude who sort of is athletic. Like that makes sense to me. But in the 3rd round, like there are so many other guys I would have taken there. Like I could list 15 people who are available there that I would have taken.
Mel Kiper's top 15 or top 10 were showing the whole time, and Daniel
Right.
Jeremiah
I would have
had a
taken
top
any
15.
one of those guys over
Yeah.
him.
I didn't know In fact, I was like, I checked my spreadsheet. I'm like, did I write Brodric Martin down? I wasn't even sure I put him on my list.
And it's the 3rd round. It's not if it's the 7th round and you're doing
and
that,
trading up again, 3 picks.
and trading up
need.
exactly.
Yeah, for depth.
Well, obviously, I mean, we might be wrong. Like maybe
I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm
Yeah.
wrong. But this is my lowest grade. I gave a D- on this one.
It's terrible. In fact,
their next pick was another guy. I'm like, I didn't know who was off the bat. That's Colby SORSDAL, the interior lineman from William and Mary.
yeah,
It took him at 152. Again, almost the same size, a little skinnier, 6'5", 304. He had 33-inch arms. but I had him pretty low on my board here. So yeah, again, I have to go do my homework on a selection back-to-back picks, which is not usually something I'm excited about
They're
doing.
both in the 7th round, then I understand
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I don't care if I know them if they're 7th round picks, honestly.
Right, exactly.
So I looked up a respected draft analyst, Dan Brugler from The Athletic.
Yeah, yeah.
I pulled up his offensive tackle rankings, and SORSDAL was 53rd ranked tackle. He didn't make my big board, by the way. But unlike Brodric Martin, he actually looks a lot better. Maybe that's the level of competition. Western Kentucky is even higher competition than William and Mary.
Yeah.
He has the the prerequisites for size as an offensive
They
tackle.
definitely drafted him off of his traits. Right?
Yeah.
So he has the traits to grow into.
Didn't allow a single sack since 2019, but again, level of competition is trying to be something
and
I'm trying to
done this
tame.
before, right? They've done this before with some offensive linemen where they really like a guy's athletic ability or some traits that he has. Size.
Well, he just did it last year with James Houston IV, right?
Yeah,
Smaller school. Yeah,
smaller school. So they've had some success. So I'm not going to like completely discount this guy, but this one didn't make sense as much to me either. I'd like it better than the Broderick Jones pick for sure. I can understand it a little bit more. One, because I do think offensive linemen, I think you can have good ones at smaller schools. I think it's possible. But yeah, I would give this at best a C plus.
so I give it a C, but I think Andrew Voorhees, another guy that's coming off an ACL injury, USC, liked him. So I thought offensive line was the right position to draft here, but I really
that's why I would have it in the C plus range, because I think it was that's 5th round, 5th, 6th, 4th, 5th, 6th round is perfect for late.
Andrew Voorhees would have given an A minus, and that would only been because of the injury. I like Voorhees' game actually quite a bit. So
yeah, he's a 3rd round guy without the injury.
But they obviously trading away all the stock they used for Brodric Martin means they only have one this last pick here, and that's ANTOINE Green, the wide receiver from North Carolina. And actually, I don't hate him. I mean, he made it on my big board, and I did only 250 players on my big board, and he was ranked at 197 for me. He has some really good traits, some highlights at film from North Carolina. It's a class filled with just a bunch of undersized receivers, and he's 6'2", 200. So an outside wideout with good speed. I've seen some film. I pulled up ANTOINE Green highlights on YouTube.
He's the kind of guy that I wouldn't be surprised to see make the team if he has a crazy.
To me, he's like Quintez Cephas. Can do
He has a crazy good camp. Quintez Cephas without the gambling. He has a crazy good camp. If he just shows out, right, it really would not surprise me if he made the team or like practice squad at the very least, and maybe plays at some point, in the season, right? And that's kind of what you're looking for in a 7th round pick, if you're being honest, like a guy who's going to fill some depth, who you don't hate, right, and maybe works his way into like a rotation guy in the NFL, right? And maybe obviously if you hit like diamond in the rough style, I mean it that's cool. But he definitely has the traits that I think he could be a good NFL wide receiver down the road.
I did find a tweet on him about some like interesting stats. As a deep threat, his 151.3 passer rating when targeted was 2nd in this whole class behind just Jalen Hyatt.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So that was an interesting one. Passer rating was very good. Obviously worth a shot for sure in the 7th round on a team that could use depth at the position.
That's a great 7th round pick in my opinion. That is fine.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of a ceiling, and I give this pick actually an A minus. But I think I would have taken Moro Ajomo, who I actually would have also taken above Brodric Martin, despite playing the same position.
If they'd taken Moro Ajomo in the 3rd, I would have hated it, but I would have liked it better than Brodric Martin.
Yeah, for sure.
I would have been like, what is going on? But I would have been like, all right. I mean, I kind of like that guy.
I looked at all of it though. In my final grade on this whole thing, out of the 3 drafts that Brad Holmes has done, and all my reviews after each draft that he's done, this was actually my least favorite. But he has earned my trust. So I will be critical, but I will be hopeful at the same time. And so I think, despite players that I felt like were, pretty large reaches due to positional value or actual talent, I just felt like, it's not always about consensus. This GM has given us every reason to trust him. You know, he's taken us from the depths, and we, like you pointed out earlier in this review, they probably were the third or fourth best team in the NFC by the end of last year. So, you know, in a few years, Holmes is going to look like a genius with this, or he's going to have plenty of egg on his face, like, right? So I just think I give this final grade a B minus, but
I give it a B with an asterisk. I wouldn't be surprised if it's higher, but I would also not be surprised if it you know falls off a cliff a little bit. It's a lot of boom or bust potential, right? If they hit on Gibbs and Jack Campbell and you know, hit on one of the other, you know, Hendon Hooker ends up being a really good backup or even plays a good lot for the Lions and is good, or you know, they get Brian Branch. If they hit on 3 of the top 5, then I feel like they'll probably be it could move up to like a B plus range for me, right? I don't really anticipate them hitting on any of the last 3. So that's the one where it's just like I feel like he's been really good with his 4th through 7th round picks to this point in his GM tenure, and these ones I wasn't a fan necessarily. I didn't hate Green, but
right.
but 7th round picks are kind of
It's a flyer. Yeah.
yeah. I mean you're just kind of spraying and praying right there, you know. So I don't know. It'll be interesting, but I don't. I agree. I don't like it as much as the first 2 picks or drafts that he's had. But I think it's, you know,
It's got a chance to boom. You know what I mean? It could be a really good draft, or it could be just pretty terrible if you look at it in the end.
I do want to point out here with a couple of minutes left, but I felt like they had a top 3 undrafted free agency.
Yeah.
So I'll go over some of the guys I really love. Mo Ibrahim was my number 10 running back in this class.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I think they got the best undrafted running back available. Adrian Martinez was my 3rd ranked undrafted free agent quarterback available, behind only Malik Cunningham and Tanner Morgan.
Yep.
Tommy DeVito was pretty close with him, in my opinion. And then wide receiver, they did not. Oh, they got Chase Cota and Katayon Thompson at wide receiver. And Chase Cota, actually from Oregon, pretty good.
Pretty good.
And Katayon Thompson last year in like way too early mock drafts was actually projected to be a late first. So there's potential there. Let's see, offensive tackle. They get Connor Galvin and Ryan Swoboda, which I actually like Connor Galvin and Swoboda. They were both 20th and 21st on my offensive tackle rankings, respectively. And then let's see, guard Brad Cecil. I had him ranked at 73rd. And interior offensive lineman, they got him. Then they signed Corey Durden, defensive tackle. He was ranked 30th for defensive tackles for me. And then they got Chris Smith, who I did not have ranked. Zach Morton, they got an edge. I did not have Zach Morton ranked. And I'm not going to say my rankings are scripture by any means, but they took 2 undrafted linebackers with Isaac Darkangelo from Illinois, and then Trevor Nowaski. Did not have either of those guys ranked too, but I think Darkangelo is a guy I considered in my top 75. And Starling Thomas, the 5th, I had him ranked as a cornerback, and he was 41st. He's extremely fast. I like Starling Thomas, the 5th, quite a bit as an undrafted signing. They also got Stephon Gilmore's brother, Stephen Gilmore, as an undrafted. So that'll be interesting. Hopefully the genetics work a little bit there. And then Xavier Bell at safety is their only other one that I have. Oh, besides Brandon Joseph, who was also probably my 2nd favorite signing. If he's what he was 2 years ago,
he was great.
I would be stoked. That's an absolute steal as an undrafted free agency. So all in all, I think they got guys that, in my opinion, were very high at their position for availability and as an undrafted free agent. I think they got 4 guys that I ranked pretty high. So hope that works. There's not a lot of teams that did do super well on this, and it's hard to really gauge undrafted free agency rankings. So I try to be too hush on it, but yeah, that is adds a little bit more to be excited about. If I include their undrafted free agency and their draft, I easily move it up from like a B minus to like a low B plus.
Yeah, I would agree.
So
Yeah, 86, 87, if you're giving it out of
there's
100.
like I said, there's 4 of those guys that if they drafted them in the 7th round instead of
I wouldn't
Antoine
have
Green,
given it
I'm
out.
like, cool.
Sixth round even with a couple
Yeah,
of those.
6th round. Yeah. One of those guys probably even above Brodric Martin.
Yeah, Broderick
That's
Martin.
right.
Broderick Martin. If they drafted Broderick Martin with their last pick, I would have been like, okay, like understandable. Like I would have been okay. I would have been actually probably would have given it like a B plus or
Yeah.
an A.
For sure.
But the third. I mean, what?
And what you traded up to get him. It's just
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that was
gave up picks for that. Like what?
he better not pull a John Penasini and retire after 1
What if
year.
maybe he's really good. Maybe we're just gonna eat our words, but I doubt it.
I want egg on my face for that one for sure.
That'd be cool. So
All right. Well, next week we're gonna start our position rankings. We'll either start with head coaches or we'll start with quarterbacks and finish with coaches. I'll figure out what I want to do first. But yeah, thanks for checking in on the draft recap and listening to our grades. And we'll see you next week.
Yep.